This tutorial is for you if you know some basic SQL and you have a family tree online or in a desktop application. I'll show you how to generate a frequency report of the surnames in your family tree. This is mine. I have Irish heritage, and this Irish name of O'Gorman is the most frequently occurring surname in my family tree. These are the top 17 surnames in my family tree. Of course, I have many more names than that. Here's the full set in my SQL browser tool, ordered by occurrences or percentage. I cut off the chart at names that were above 1%. As I keep scrolling down, I have the names that occur less frequently, right down to those surnames that only have one occurrence in my family tree. There are some steps to complete before you create your report. First step is to export your family tree to a GEDCOM file. You will then install the free Roots Magic application and use it to convert your GEDCOM file into a database. You then install a SQL browser and write SQL scripts that you run against your tree database. To get you set up, we have a PDF guide that you can download with all the steps and links to the installs. You can watch our 2-minute quick launch video, which runs through the installations, or you can walk through our 30-minute video tutorial, which goes every step of the way. This one is the most appropriate if you're a beginner to SQL. I'm using SQLite Expert as my browser. You may be using dbeaver. I'm going to connect to my rootsmagic.rm tree file, which is my database. Click Open Database. I'm going to find that .rm tree file. Remember that default extension set by SQLite Expert is any of these extensions here. I'm looking for a .rm tree file, so it doesn't show up with this set as it is. So change that to all files, and here I can see a .rm tree file. I'm going to open this one, and here on the left are the tables in this database. The tables that I want to look at for this particular report are person table and the name table. The person table contains an entry or a row, hit execute SQL there, for every single person in my table, each one assigned a person ID. You'll notice when I scroll to the right that there aren't any name fields in here, and many of these fields are to do with the Roots Magic software, the colors of the actual interface. We don't care about that. The only field or column in here that I tend to look at is this gender field. But from the point of view of my name frequency report, I'm not interested in gender. By running the select star, you can get a feel for how many records there are in the table. We know that there are at least 512, but we don't know exactly how many there are. So I'm going to jump to the end of the table. I can either use the slider here to scroll down, or I can use this button to go to the last record. And now the browser is telling me that there are 534 persons in this table, and that means there are 534 persons in your tree. And if you want a simpler way of checking, we can just do count star, and you can see I have 534 persons. But I'm not going to use the person table in my name frequency report. Instead, I'm going to use the table that has the names, which, as you may have guessed, is the name table. Let's take a look at the name table. Select star from name table, execute that, and now I'm seeing the kind of data that I want. So I have the surname field, surname or last name. I have the given field, which is the first name. There's a number of other fields here that, again, I'm not too interested in. But the one thing I want to draw your attention to is the number of records in the name table. Select count star, 536. That's more records than I had in the person table, which, if I remind myself, was 534. 2 records more. You may have a lot more records in your name table than you have in your person table. What's going on here? If I take another look at the entire row in the name table, there is a field called is primary. And for me, notice how it's set to 1 or true for most records. And there's just a small number of records, exactly 2, I think, where it's set to false or 0. I'm going to focus on one of these rows that is primary set to 0. I'm going to scroll over to the left because I want to find the person ID for this particular row. At this point, I should point out that in this table, where the primary key or ID of the entire row is the name ID, there is a second column, the owner ID, which is actually the lookup to the person table. So the owner ID here, that number is the number of the ID in the person table. If you're familiar with database relationship diagrams, this is my simplified representation. You have the person table here with person ID and a gender field and a lot of other fields that we're not interested in. And any given person can have multiple name records. And each of those name records will have a unique name ID, but the owner ID is the link back to the person ID. So for a given person, multiple name records with the same person ID. So to make it easier for you to decide whether you want the records that are not his primary, let's take a closer look at what that means. So I'm just going to filter where is primary equal to false or 0, and let's see what I've got. I have two records in the name table where the is primary is false. I'm going to take a closer look at one of them. I'll take this one, which has an owner ID of 7. And now I want to go and take another look at the name table, and this time I'm going to filter on that owner ID equal to 7. And you can see that I have two rows in the name table with the same owner ID, a unique name ID assigned to each. In each case, they have the same surname, but a different given name. So this person is represented in my tree with two name entries, one for Thomas, one for Timothy. Timothy and Thomas aren't obvious nicknames for each other, and for the life of me I can't remember why I have both names attached to the same person. Let me take another look at the other one. So I'll just run this again, and this time I'll grab the one with the owner ID of equal to 90 and take a look. Okay, well this is a little bit more obvious. So for the same person, two different name records, I put Margaret and Maggie in a single entry, and then I've just got Maggie in a second entry. I think I need to go clean up my tree. I won't go into that more, other than to say that one of these entries will be marked as primary and the other one as is primary equal to false. Having looked a bit closer at the data, I've decided that when I run my name frequency report, I only want to use the is primary records. Otherwise, this surname will be counted as two different entries in my tree, and that's not quite right. What that means is when I do my frequency report on the name table, I am going to add a filter where is primary equal to true. So my queries are going to run off this data set, of which I scroll down to the end. I have 534 rows, which is exactly the same number as the persons in my tree when I counted the person table. With the data that I have, how do I calculate the frequency of last names? To calculate frequency, we need to count the total number of persons in the tree. For each surname, we account the occurrences of that surname, and then we divide the occurrences by the total number to get the frequency for that surname. I already have the SQL to count the total number of persons in the tree, so now let's write the SQL to count the occurrences by surname. And to do that, we're going to use the group by syntax. So our query is going to look like select surname. We're going to do a count of all records for that surname from the name table, where is primary equal to 1. But because we want to count the rows per surname, we use group by the name of the column we're grouping on. And if this was another SQL database, that would be exactly what we need. I'm going to run that against this database, which is the Roots Magic SQLite database, and we'll encounter our first problem. So hit execute SQL. You're not getting any data here, and just off screen, I'll just put it over here. I'm getting a pop-up error. And this pop-up error is saying no such collation sequence with this keyword here, which I'll decipher as RM for Roots Magic no case. The problem here is that this Roots Magic database has some proprietary built-in code to support the Roots Magic software. We're not using the software, we're using the database, and we don't actually have access to that proprietary code. So we're going to force our SQL query to get around that. And to do so, type exactly as I type here. Use the keyword collate and no case. And just trust me, get rid of that, run this, and this will work. And there we go. So here, I've got my surname, I've got the count per surname. It is ordered by the surname in alphabetical order. And interestingly, you immediately see some aspects of the data that may be a problem for me. I can see that I have some surnames that are empty. I have 11 exactly in my family tree. And then I have some surnames, 3 surnames, where the surname are these underscores. So here's where it's useful to do some analysis of problematic data just to see what's going on. So I'm just going to copy this query down, and I'm going to take a look at that data. I still want the where is primary, but I want to filter on the surname where it's either that empty string or it's those underscores. And I'm not sure how many underscores there are in a row, so I'll just copy that. And one of the irritating aspects of this particular browser, if I copy it, it doesn't just take the contents of the cell, because it takes the heading as well. So just get rid of that. Now I have this number of underscores. Stick that there. Close my quote and parentheses. I'm missing my keyword in. So my surname is in a list of strings that I'm providing. And I really don't want every field. I just want to take a look at the surname and the given name just to see what's what. If I run that and forget something, I'm going to get that error again. That's because I forgot to bring in my workaround. So let's just copy this down. It goes after the field that has the character data, the string field, and run this. And now I'm seeing the actual 14 records there. I've either got an empty surname or I have these underscores. Well, I see that they're all female. And what's going on here are these are the women in my tree where they're married and I don't have their maiden name. Usually I leave the maiden name as an empty string. I don't put in the married name, but in some cases, in some trees, there is a convention of using these underscores to denote a missing surname. I really shouldn't mix both formats in a single tree, so I'm making a note to myself to go and clean up my tree. The other thing I'll say is you're going to get a little weary of typing collate no case a lot in your SQL statements. There is a workaround that lets you never have to do that again. The workaround is a little finicky and it doesn't work with all SQL browsers. I go into it in our course, which if you check the link below, you can find more details. So having taken a little detour with some data analysis, let's get back to calculating the frequency. Remember, we were at this point where we're looking to build the SQL query, counts the occurrences per surname. We've done that. So the next step is to do this calculation, which is the occurrences divided by the total number. So I'm copying down this query, and then I'm going to add in this additional filter, not in this list of strings. And there we go. So I want to divide this count by the total number of persons in the family tree. Now you could hard code this and put in something like divide by whatever the number is. I think it's 534. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to make a query that is generic to any tree. So I do have my divide by. Just drop a line to make it clearer. And it's divide by, select, count the number of rows from the person table. Let's see what that looks like. And I'm getting all zeros. What's going on there? If you remember, our counts were ranging from maybe 1 to 13, 14, 15. These are small numbers, whereas the total number of rows in the person table is over 500. So let's say we're dividing 5 by 500. We're getting a fraction. And the count gives us an integer. And the integer is going to display, when it's a small fraction, it's going to display a 0. So what we want are data types that are not an integer, but will show decimal points. We're going to use the data type that is real, REAL. And to do that, we will cast our count here as real, and then we'll cast this count from the person table also as real, and we'll take a look at that query. And now you can see we're getting somewhere. Now, these numbers are quite small and a little bit difficult to read. So what I'm going to do is, instead of having the frequency as the occurrences divided by the total count, I'm going to express this as a percentage. And that is quite simple. I am going to multiply this by 100. I run that, and I am getting something a bit more meaningful. These numbers here are quite low because certainly a name like Apollo and Belletti, Biddulph, they happen to be high alphabetically, but I think they're very low in terms of representation in my tree. So to make this easier to see, I'm going to order by the second column. So order by second column, descending. Execute that. So O'Gorman is 9% of the total. That's actually quite a lot. Still find this a little difficult to read. I certainly don't need all these decimal points. So what I'm going to do now is a little bit of extra formatting. I'm also going to give this display column names I'm going to name the surname as the last name, and this I'm going to name as percentage. Because I've named now this column percentage, I can order by percentage. I prefer to order by the name of a column than the actual position, because if you have a lot of columns, it's kind of difficult to see what you're actually ordering on. Okay, so last name percentage. So that gives me a nicer heading, but it still doesn't do anything about this very long number. So now I'm going to format my number. I use the function format. This function takes the first argument or parameter as what format you want. So I'm going to open quotes, just bear with me, and a comma. What is this? Well, what this means here, point 1, is give me one number after the decimal place. This means I want to show a percentage sign, and this 3 here before the point or decimal point. It isn't obvious with my numbers. Let me just run this and then I'll explain what it is. Oops. Just need to close that parenthesis and run this. Okay, and now you can see my percentage sign. You can see that I only have one number after the decimal point. And what's this tree about? Basically, it right justifies the data such that if I had percentage that was 10 or above, like it was 10.5%, what you'd see is that everything lines up. So the 9 and the 7 and the 6 here, these numbers would be pushed one character to the right and it will all line up. It's not obvious because I don't actually have any names that are above 9.9%, but I might have in another tree. And this is my report in SQL. If I just give myself a little bit of space and scroll down, you can see that once you get down to the low numbers here, that it's probably not telling us a whole lot. These are 1s and 2s, etc. But what's interesting is really anything that's probably above 1% is interesting to take a look at these clusters of surnames. So now we've got the data, let's do a chart. I'm going to do it both in Google Sheets and in Microsoft Excel. So here's my data. I'm not going to take every name. I'm only going to take names that are above the 1% mark. So here's my cutoff. Scroll up, copy that into the clipboard. Now I'm going to switch over to Google Sheets. I've got this new spreadsheet, no data in it. Put my cursor into A1. I'm going to Control V to paste that data. Now I want to turn this into a chart. So I go to Insert, Chart. I don't want the pie chart. I want a bar chart. And I want the bar chart such that the higher numbers are at the top, the lower numbers are at the bottom. So I'm choosing this one, and here we go. You can play around with the display and the colors as much as you like. To do the same in Microsoft Excel, here I have a blank workbook in Microsoft Excel. I've still got that data in my clipboard, so I'm going to Control V here, get that looking right. So once again, I've got the data highlighted. I go to Insert. I'm going to go to Recommended Charts. And out of the choice, I want a bar chart. Now, the default option of the bar chart has got the order with the lowest numbers at the top. I prefer it the other way around, but there isn't actually a one-off choice for that. So just take the clustered bar, click OK. And if you like this display, then that's fine. If you want to go an extra step, you need to select the names. This is the y-axis. Double click on that and it opens up this formatting. And over in this formatting, click on the checkbox of categories in reverse order. And as you can see, that changes as I want it. And from here, you can change the colors and the formatting as you choose. Hope that gives you some inspiration to make that even more colorful. Or you may want a pie chart or a line chart. Choice is yours. This YouTube video is a shortened and simpler version of one lesson of our online course on how to use SQL to analyze your family trees. The course is based around at least 10 SQL projects where we build up queries to run useful SQL reports on your family tree database. Here's a course breakdown. Lesson 1 creates the detailed person list with each person's birth date and birthplace, death date and death place, plus their parents' details. Lesson 2 involves creating a surname frequency report, which will give you insights into the most prominent family lines in your tree. Lesson 3 shows you how to parse the addresses for the birthplaces and death places into manageable pieces for further analysis. That would be pieces such as the town, state, and countries into separate fields. Once you've separated out the addresses, Lesson 4 builds on this to create frequency reports for state, towns, and counties. This will let you identify key locations in your family's history. Still working with locations, Lesson 5 gives you the At This Place report, where you learn how to create a list of all the family tree events, births, marriages, deaths, etc., whatever you've added as facts to your family tree at a given location. Then we move on to provide a similar report of family tree events at a specific date. Lesson 7 involves doing some data cleansing on your family tree. So we show you techniques and queries to find duplicate individuals in your tree. Lesson 8, we look at some classic age issues. That would include individuals whose birth and death date mean that they must have lived 170 years. So something's gone wrong in your records. Lesson 9 is a gap report where we will identify missing details in your tree. That would include married women without a maiden name or all the people without a death location. Number 10, we've put this towards the end of the course because it's probably something you want, which is to show the ancestral lines, grandparents, great-grandparents, great-great-grandparents, etc. That's a tricky SQL challenge, which we will show you how to do. Once you've got your ancestral lines, we then look at the ancestor gap report. What we're looking for here is branches and lines where you're missing great-great-great-greats. So if you're really interested in this course, it's not quite ready to launch yet. We'll put a link in the description below to where you can pre-register for the course for free. We just need your email, and we will send you notification of when the course lessons become available for purchase.